Hello and welcome to a Lunch and Learn. I have a very special guest today. Actually, still this morning. It's only 11:30, but I'm very fortunate to have Mr. Tim Roe. He is the district manager for Farmers Insurance. Welcome, Tim, to the show.
Thanks, Carlos. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know that there's lots going on, but I think today's topic of how to start your own business is something that I think a lot of folks can benefit from, especially right now with the way the economy is and folks losing jobs and all of that. I think it's a perfect timing to folks get to hear some of your expertise and ways that they can actually start their own business. So again, folks, thanks for joining us. If you're watching now, please make sure you share the live stream. I am your host, Carlos Garcia with F.Y.I. Live, and my very special guest, Mr. Tim Roe from Farmers Insurance. So Tim, let's jump right into it. Please tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started with Farmers.
Well, thanks, Carlos. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. My career has been long and a long career with Farmers. I've been with Farmers for 38 years. Most of my working life, I started as a very young man. I always tease people. I started with my hair was black, so it's a long time ago. I got a degree in management fresh out of college here locally in Southern California, out of the University of Laverne. Many people know that school. And ultimately, I always wanted my own business, but one of the challenges was I had no capital. Probably at the time, I mean, starting a business was beyond thought, even though I studied it in school and studied a lot of management things. And there wasn't a lot of businesses to start. But when I started, back in the early 80s, the economy was a mess. Now, I don't know that I ever thought I'd be on an interview like this with something like COVID going on, because it's been a challenge as well. But
right.
The marketplace was a challenge coming out of college when I did to find work. So it kind of afforded me an opportunity to maybe explore business ownership. And Farmers was a company at the time that afforded young people an opportunity to really start a business with no capital, just a lot of sweat equity, working hard, and basically provided a framework so that I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. Obviously, I had to get some professional licensing and a lot of training. But I always tease people that back in the day, and probably still to this day, I was never the smartest tool in the shed, but I could outwork anybody. So I think for me, getting started was a great opportunity. In my early 20s, starting an agency, selling insurance products. That's where it all started, right out of college. And my first office was in Glendora. I stayed into what it's today known as a district office, which is what I've been running for the last 37 years. And you started in a district office and then ultimately migrated. My very first office was on Emerald Avenue in the city of Laverne, across from where the theater is today. And it was
right. Okay.
There was nothing there. It was the first building built, the field where Michael's is, and that I think it's Michael's and the Big Lots. That was just a dirt field. So I used to look out my window at a dirt field across there off of Emerald Avenue, which is wow. Emerald's the one that runs directly into the theater, crossing Foothill and Byrne. So started there, and then it was a great journey. And then the company approached me to take on my current role today. And I said, only under one condition. And they said, what was that? I said that I'm still self-employed. I don't have any desire to take a corporate role and do the corporate thing. And I'm not being critical of the corporate thing. It's just that I was a pretty independent guy and wanted an opportunity to not have any ceilings on my future. And so the district manager position, which is still an independent role at Farmers, affords me the opportunity to basically run my own business and continue to create my own opportunities in a little different light. I don't in my role today, I don't have customers. I basically recruit and train agency owners and teach them the product, the selling skills, and the business acumen to be able to run and own and operate their own farmers agencies. There's about 13,000 agencies in the country now, and about 234 individuals that are independent like myself who operate in the role of developing agencies. So that's the Reader's Digest version. So that's how it got started.
Great. So for those folks joining us now, we had Jessica, Pam, We had other folks as well. Christine, thank you for joining us on this live feed. I am also putting on there Mr. Tim Roe's website. You can follow him there. Have any questions, make sure you visit his website. It's gotroe.com. And we're talking about how to get started on with your own business. So I want to make sure, folks, you guys understand that this is not a sales pitch. This is actually a very smart individual that's willing to take time out of his schedule to help folks who really want to start their own business, be their own boss, be independent. And, obviously there's a lot of hard work involved, but Tim is going to walk us through the process, how we can get started with our own business as well. So again, thank you, Tim, for taking time out of your schedule, and appreciate you being here. And floor is yours. Walk us through it. How do we get started?
Well, yeah, I don't want to make my comments, as you mentioned, Carlos, exclusive to farmers. I want to let people know that I, having understood business and been in business for 30 plus years, I think it's really critical when you're intrigued in the thought of opening a business that you first do some research and understand. There's a lot of different ways to start a business, whether it's franchising, whether it's even a partnership with somebody. But for the most part, I think most people that start businesses, from my experience, maybe worked in an industry, or they learned a trade or a skill. And a lot of times what happens is they go, well, I'll give you a simple example. If I'm a roofer and I'm a very good roofer and I know how to put roofs on, and I work for a guy and I say, wow, that guy's making a lot of money, I could do that, so I'm going to start my own roofing business. Well, there's a lot of truth that you could do that. The challenge that you'll find is, though, just because you're maybe good at a trade or you're good at a particular technique doesn't necessarily mean that you can run a business. Or you can sure try, but when you begin the process of running a business, there's so much more involved, whether it's the startup of that business, you can't be the only laborer or individual working in that business, because to create wealth in business today, employees have to be profit centers. And when I think of running a business today, I do a lot of the work, but the things I choose to do are the things that create the most revenue for our operation. I have 7 other employees who I consider to be profit centers, and we constantly evaluate and determine what revenue streams they might bring to the operation. So no matter what kind of business you're starting, whether it's a retail establishment, a franchise yogurt shop, a Subway store, or a nail shop, whatever you're looking at, you got to understand top line and bottom line. And a lot of times my experience has been that people understand that, as an owner, it seems like the top line, the revenue that comes to that business, is all yours. But we don't really eat the top line. As a business owner, you eat the bottom line. And the bottom line does involve a lot of, in some cases, expenses and things that maybe you may not see as an employee, and where you learn a trade real well. And then coupled with the fact that you might be out, and I'm just using the example of the roofer, you might be out putting the roof on the house, and now who's going to market your business? How are you going to get the next job?
Right.
And so all of a sudden now you're trying to juggle a multitude of balls in the air. And I try to give people the vision of a plate spinner in the circus. You're spinning you're spinning all these plates, and at some point you're going to choose one plate that you hold up, and the other plate's still got to be up, but you better build an organizational chart or a structure where you understand who's doing those things. Otherwise, your business will suffer, because simply due to the fact that, if you have a job today, what's tomorrow look like? And you're always trying to develop. And then, of course, there are many outside factors that will influence your business, whether COVID is a complete first timer for me. This is beyond scope, but there's so many factors: competition, product lifespan, internet competition. There's just a tremendous amount of things that are happening. And if you watch very closely, we're seeing a lot of transition right now. If you were a restaurant owner right now, that's a tough animal. Restaurants make money turning over tables, and they've been told you can't have that many tables, and people haven't been out in a while. So when they go to a restaurant with their friends, they want to sit and talk, and you're probably sitting there as a restaurant owner. Hey, how do I turn these tables over? I can't make money if Mr. and Mrs. Jones sit at that table for an hour and a half and I got 25 people waiting outside? So there's a lot of factors that go into, but I think most importantly for me, if I'm trying to teach somebody, you've got to have a deep rooted desire to control your own destiny. And it's not all going to work like you think it is. There's going to be peaks and valleys. And the best way I can describe it, you got to kind of act like a duck on water. You know, they look smooth on top of the water, but underneath they're paddling like hell. And when I started in my 20s, it was not uncommon to work a 14-hour day. I had poor eating habits because, you know, you're getting up early and you're working late and you're trying to keep it all together. And but at the end of the day, you're building something, and you're not being controlled by a outside environment that says, you know what, your position, you know, we don't need it anymore, or the corporation's being sold. So controlling your own destiny has to be a deep-rooted desire that you have, and a willingness to commit tremendous amount of time and hours and passion into whatever it is that you're doing. I've talked to a lot of business owners, and a lot of times I find that the one thing that is in common if they're in business, no matter what it is, they have a complete passion for what they're doing. And those people generally do very well because they don't consider it work. It's not a grind. It's something that they thoroughly enjoy because they have a passion for it. And I think that's why people start businesses that they have a passion for. Unfortunately, they don't always create the revenue stream that they would have thought, because their passion might outweigh the marketplace for whatever it is that they're trying to sell. I'd like to teach golf, and make a living at it, but there's no way in hell that anybody's going to get golf lessons from me. So, just because I have a passion for golf doesn't mean that I can make money doing it. So,
and I'm going to tell you something too. You brought up very, very great points. And, we sometimes, before we get into business of ourselves, we think that we can do better normally than our boss can. And so we think, hey, we can run a company and all of that. But it takes a lot of hard work and dedication, man. I will tell you from experience too that, for us that own our own business, a lot of the misconception sometimes is that, we live at large, all of this, and it's not. Every day for us, it's not a 9-to-5 job. It's beyond that, because we're out there trying to find new business every single day. So we're working maybe twice and 3 times as hard as a lot of folks who are. And again, no knock to a 9-to-5 job. Yeah. We've all been through it, but it's a lot of hard work. And like you said, you have to have dedication. And if you're not willing to put the time and effort, then you can't expect to get these massive of great results. This is another reason why I wanted to make sure that folks got to hear what you had to say with this, because you're bringing up very relevant points that apply not only to your industry, but across the board, and that's also very important as well too.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point, Carlos. One of the things that I've found over the years is that you said it best. I mean, a lot of people look and friends of mine and say, man, Tim, you've done well in your career. And for many people, they think this was easy. When I was 21 and it was a grind. I mean, there was not, the only problem I had is a lot of my friends that were young, they wanted me to go party with them. And I said, I don't have time, because being successful in business requires a lot of discipline. I think if there's one thing that this takes, is being in any business, is tremendous amount of discipline, because there is a lot of distractions. There's a lot of opportunity. And, I always tell people it takes discipline to win. And if you're going to start a business today, you're going to have serious discipline, because you're going to have to do things that other people aren't willing to become successful. I don't care what it is. I mean, and it takes a lot of hard work, and it's getting harder and harder today, because there's so many people that have low overhead type businesses that are internet driven, maybe selling products that, you think about retail businesses today. Who'd ever thought that malls and strip shopping centers would be in jeopardy because people are selling the product, across the internet, with not the expense that retail store has of staffing it, rent, turning the lights on, the air conditioner. There's so much that goes into running a business. And I probably shouldn't say that insurance isn't part of it, but I think it's really, really important to understand that, that discipline that it requires, no matter what business you start, is probably what's going to be the recipe for it. And then having some capital to be able to withstand the tough early times. I mean, it goes without saying that people who put their sweat equity but don't have capital, man, it can be a hard road. And you got to eat and you got to make a living when you're trying to do this. So it's very challenging. So, yep.
And, Tim, I also want to make sure that you covered also you're representing farmers. And I know we said that this isn't exactly about farmers, but I want folks to also understand that there's opportunities with your expertise as well as the company for farmers to starting your own business. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, as folks probably are thinking of, or they don't know where to get started, what type of business to get into. This is actually definitely a good option for them if they want to pursue that as well too.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Carlos. I mean, for selfish reasons, I love to tell the story. I think a lot of people don't understand our business. I mean, I always tease that there's nothing sexy about insurance, selling insurance. People never think of that. But I would also share with you stuff that people don't realize. Farmers Insurance has about 13,000 agents across the country. And the average revenue of a farmer's agency today is about $450,000 a year. Because one of the things that make our business unique is what we call reoccurring revenue. Some people call it residual income. I don't like the word income because income to me is on the bottom line, revenue's on the top line. You get reoccurring revenue, but expenses can go up. So when we're looking to start somebody into our business model, we're looking for people who, one, have a desire to be self-employed. Two, we have to take them through pretty extensive training program to teach them the product, also get some professional licenses. Our business requires a couple of professional licenses. So you're studying for state exams to be able to sell the product under the California Department of Insurance licensee. But the greatest part of it is that we have a turnkey program. Even though you're self-employed, we have a blueprint for success. We know what it takes to be successful. So we're not asking you to reinvent the wheel. We're just looking for people. I always like to say we hire attitudes, we'll train for success. Somebody who has the right attitude can be very successful in our business, because I'm not looking for you to walk in here and know insurance. What I'm looking for you to walk in is have a can-do attitude and have a circle or a net where you can actually be able to communicate and talk to people. Our business, even with COVID, I just was looking at some numbers this morning. We had a little blip on the radar during the month of April and a little bit in May. Our productivity is back to where it was pre-COVID, and we're not out of COVID. But, people were adjusting their life and they were back home and a lot was going on. Insurance companies were handing out rebates, as we were. We gave out some substantial rebates. So when you think about the business of insurance and what we do, there's no larger marketplace. Every house, human being, small business, car are all potentially something that we collect premium on. And agents get paid based on premium. So I hate to say this because people hate me for this, but when rates go up, guess who gets paid for that? An insurance agent. So the commissions don't get cut. And I don't know about you, but the last time that your rates went down substantially, you don't recall that time. So as you're in a business that's relatively recession proof and you have a book of business with reoccurring revenue, you have a built-in revenue over and over. Now, if you compare that to other business, just as an example, if I have a yogurt shop, I've got to rely on people to walk into that yogurt shop every day. People go, well, there's reoccurring revenue. Yeah, that could be true. But right now, have you gone to a yogurt shop? I mean, you go in there and there's a lot of things if it's a franchise and you got a lot of overhead expense and a lot of product and a lot of waste and a lot of young employees that need to get paid that don't show up for work and 300% employee turnover. Our business is so unique and different from that standpoint, because once you build that, I guess the vision is once you build that snowball of customers, think of a snowball rolling down a mountain. It continues to gather snow, and that's the premium. So it's not uncommon for, I have agents that gross well over $1 million in a year, simply and have run at 30 or 40% overheads. They're taking home $600,000 or $700,000 a year. Of course, that's before Uncle Sam gets their share. So
Right.
it's a great opportunity, and reoccurring revenue is the reason to get in this business, and also the fact that the marketplace is so large. Now, do we have competition? Yeah. What if I told you 70% of people shop for insurance on the internet first? Absolutely, that's changed. But guess who's there? That's us. We're there ultimately to, people still buy from people that they know and trust. So even though people start shopping on the internet, those internet leads and stuff come through us, and they ultimately get in the agent's hands who work directly with customers. So that's a 30,000 foot view of why insurance and why farmers. I think, there's a lot of insurance carriers and companies out there. I'm not going to lie, I'm loyal to farmers, have been for years, and which makes me a little unique. But I know all the other companies and what they have, and our contract is by far the best industry for startup, as well as the fact that we don't basically keep our agents captive. They can sell products other than farmers if we don't write a particular line of insurance. So, yeah.
No, that's great. And you folks that are just joining us, this is Mr. Tim Roe. He is a district manager for Farmers Insurance. We've been talking about how to start your own business. I have Tim's website there, goToRoe.com. So goToRoe.com, make sure you follow him. He is on social media as well too. Visit his website. If you have any additional questions, please make sure you put them on the feed as well, and we can address them at another later time, or we can come back and address them as well too. So before we wrap things up, Tim, let's end up with maybe some key things to take away from this for folks to continue thinking about starting their own business. What would you say would be like the next couple of steps for them to get the ball rolling?
Well, I think the best thing to do is to do some research. There's a lot of ways to do research. If you're looking at a particular business because maybe you have a passion for it, or a particular trade, I think it's really important maybe to get involved with networking with some people who are in that business. I think I know real estate agents, but I've never been a real estate agent. But I've got hundreds of real estate agents in my career that, and just as a quick sidelight, that want to get in insurance. And they never seem to want to give up real estate, because real estate, I always tease people, but real estate agents are elephant hunters. They hunt a couple elephants a year and make big commissions on a few transactions, those that do a few, and they do okay. In insurance, we're squirrel hunters. We do a lot of transactions, and we gain that recurring revenue year over year. So you're trying to put a number of policies on the books that generate that revenue. So I think research is really critical, and how you go about it, talking to people that are in the industry. I think there's also a tremendous amount of resources. I know it's overstated, but man, it's amazing what you can learn on the internet and through Google and jumping on things like this. I mean, there's just so much information out there. I probably sit on, even after 38 years, I probably sit on 4 webinars a week about topics relating to my industry, because just when you think you know it all, you don't know nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, there is so much change, and technology, things are coming at us so rapidly. And and I tease people, and I know, Carlos, you'll appreciate this, but when I was in college, I learned on a Radio Shack Tandy computer. Microsoft didn't even exist. So
I remember those.
So when people talk to me about, well, what about Excel? What about this? I'm thinking, I'm self-taught. It wasn't in school. I mean, we didn't use Word. We didn't have Excel. And I'm not trying to say I'm an old guy, but I guess I'm an old guy. But the reality of it, that stuff really is relatively new. And so you got to understand the things and the stuff that, really do have an impact on the particular business. And then what are the outside influences that could impact that business? I'll give you an example. I don't know how you could have predicted COVID, but there are outside influences. For example, I remember when, and I always use the yogurt shops. Yogurt shops were popping up everywhere. They were everywhere. And there were independent yogurt shops, and there was Yogurt Land, and there was this yogurt and that yogurt, and everybody was getting in the yogurt business. Now you see those same franchise type operations closing up. I don't know what it is other than the cost of running those business and the margins, which is critical to any business like that, probably have shrunk, and the cost of doing business, licensing, registration. I don't know how many yogurts you got to sell a day to really make a profit and ultimately,
Right.
get it done. But I think from my standpoint, when I think of those things, you have to be able to do the research and understand the business that you're looking at. What are going to be the influences that may impact it going forward? Just because you have a passion for it, now if you are so unique in a trade and you can design something that nobody else can design, then it's just a matter of getting your product and distributing it, right? But that's if you really have a unique, art or trade that maybe nobody can duplicate. If you're skilled with your hands and you can make something that you can sell at a profit, my goodness, that's unique. But generally speaking, when you look at other businesses, if you're going to be a bookkeeper, how do you separate yourself from the rest of the animals in the herd? And I tell agents this all the time. How are you going to be a differentiator? How do you differentiate yourself? And if you can't differentiate yourself from the marketplace, just using farmers as an example, you can call Geico and get a cheap insurance quote tomorrow. And everybody knows that because the lizard tells you every night on television, give us 15 minutes, we'll save you 15%. But what the lizard doesn't tell you is the lizard can't coordinate all your insurance. They can't do your home, your auto, your boat, your recreational vehicle. And there ain't nobody at the lizard going to tell you about how much coverage you need or why you need this coverage. Instead, they're going to give you a quote. And if the quote sounds good, you buy it. And unfortunately, you find out what you have when it's too late. So the differentiator there is people pay for advice-based service from a farmer's agent. And I think that's what makes what we do so critical. And that is the value proposition. So what is your value proposition would be the last thing. I think you got to know, what is the value proposition that I provide as a business owner? Why does somebody want to do business with me? And I ask myself that question all the time. Why does somebody want to be a farmer's agent underneath Tim Roe? And the value proposition is experience, training, and obviously trust. And I think those are critical factors. So you got to know the value proposition that you're going to provide to the marketplace, and you got to understand what that differentiator is, because how else are you going to go in the marketplace? You can't just open a store and go, hey, look, we're here. Just because you hung a sign up, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to attract a lot of business unless you're the only game in town in that particular business, maybe. So, but I guess that's the things I'd do a lot of research on. I don't know if that helps. So.
No, absolutely. And one thing too is there is a lot of folks out there, but it also comes down to when you're building your business, it's all about building those relationships, right? Money will come later on, but a lot of folks are driven more by the money than the relationship building as well too. And just because, we're all in the same industry together doesn't mean that we can't also find ways to collaborate together. Like in the IT industry, for me, there's so many people doing what I do, right? But at the end of the day, it comes down to how I'm going to connect with folks. And whenever I even attend meetings or networking events, I never look at somebody in my field or my industry as an enemy or somebody's going to steal my business. No, I find ways that I can collaborate with them, so we grow. Your team all becomes grow. Even though we may be competitors, but I know that if I have a job, I can call someone to help me out on this. I can call someone else to help me out. So if you surround yourself with those type of folks and mindset as you're growing your business, you're going to be that much more succell as well too. And that's in my humble opinion.
No, Carl, I think the relationship discussion you mentioned is critical. I think, I'll leave you with a couple thoughts. I don't think you can enter a business like my business if you're an introvert. If you're not somebody that enjoys being one of the first people up to dance at a wedding, my industry is probably not for you. At the same time, there are people that just don't enjoy going and being outgoing and networking. You have to be that today. I mean, if you're not going to be that and you're going to create a business, I mean, you really have to, as I call it, bullhorn marketing. You got to tell your story, right? You got to get out and tell your story. It's not bragging, it's just telling your story. I mean, I didn't learn about you, Carlos, till I met you through a networking group and learned a little bit about what you do. And I have a son who is some people know my son as an IT wizard. He's a coder. He codes in 7 languages, and I don't even get involved with the computers in my operation because he does it all. But he he's got a different niche than you do. He doesn't do anything like what you do. And yet, if you need a computer built, or you need if you need something, an app written for an iPhone, he can code it out and do it. And so he's got a unique value proposition that I don't think he realizes as a young man. Yet he's realizing it now because the marketplace is starting to offer him money. So he's learning about that. And some people don't want to pay him what he thinks he's worth. So listen, that's the nature of the business. But I think relationships are critical. And then I think probably, I guess for me, because I've had a long career, I think you have to be authentic. I'm not.
Absolutely.
I am not a guy that is going to dance around and try to sell you a cheap watch. I'm going to tell you straight up how it is. I don't got any skeletons in the closet, and the reality of that is that people want to trust somebody they're doing business with. If you're an agent underneath me and I'm helping you get started in business, I'm going to tell you, if you're doing well, we're going to celebrate. And if you've got some real struggles, like I got to wake you up every morning to get to work, it's probably not going to work real well. And I'm probably going to tell you that. And that's not because it's not a, it's a business. It's not a love affair. And when you're in business, you have to treat it that way. You can't, I read a quote a long time ago. You can't make decisions with your heart. You got to make them with your head. If you make them with your heart, all you end up with is heart disease. Okay. You got to make decisions with your head. And sometimes people around you don't understand why that decision's made, and whether you justify it or not, it needs to come from your head, not from your heart. And there's nothing wrong with having a good heart, but sometimes in business, we make poor decisions because we make them with our heart, not with our head. So, and I'll leave it at that. And I hope that those that are watching out there, I could go on for hours. I know we've been here a half an hour, but I think it would be great, Carlos, to, at any time in the future, I'd love to continue discussion. We could take other topics, but this is great. And I really appreciate you inviting me, more importantly. And I'm glad that you're providing this forum for people to be able to share some of their industry knowledge, or better yet, general knowledge about business and what we do.
I appreciate it, Tim. And that actually takes us to the end of our show, folks. We appreciate you guys tuning in. This has been Mr. Tim Roe, District Manager of Farmers Insurance. Tim, this has been a wealth of information and very much appreciated. Like you said, we're definitely scheduled some other segments as well to talk about other aspects of the industry and tap on your expertise, man. That's very valuable to a lot of folks. And hopefully, if you're watching this now, make sure that you share this video out. And get in touch with Tim, put a comment on there. I'll put his contact information at the end of the show. And again, thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. This has been F.Y.I. Live with Mr. Tim Roe of Farmers Insurance. Tim, stick around a little bit after this as well, too.
Thank you, Carl.